Welcome to Blaze News, The Mandate. It's day 110. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is cracking down on the deep state. During an appearance on the Matt Gaetz show, she revealed 11 investigations into intel leaks and how they're trying to undermine President Trump.
We have 11 other internal investigations ongoing now within ODNI, and we intend to continue to carry them out to completion to hold those who are illegally leaking classified information, trying to undermine the president, politicizing intelligence, hold them accountable, because this has got to end.
Steve Witkoff is the special envoy to the Middle East. He told Breitbart News that Trump prefers diplomacy over military intervention. And he also had this to say about neocons.
You're right. The neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And the president believes that his force of personality, the way he is going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way in the interest of the United States government. And I believe in that, too.
The White House shared that its war on DNI has raked in over $2 billion in savings after nearly 750 workers were fired or placed on leave. Now, some of the biggest savings come from the EPA, the Department of Education, and the Department of Labor. Meanwhile, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is working to revamp America's air traffic control system. He unveiled a plan to replace the current system so the FAA can enhance safety, reduce delays, and unlock the future of air travel. Tim Lilly, who lost his son, he was American Airlines pilot Sam Lilly in the D.C. plane collision, thanked President Trump for this plan.
I just really want to thank President Trump for his leadership in putting forth this program, because we want to really make sure that no other family has to go through the loss that our family and the other 66 families have gone through.
Yesterday, FBI Director Kash Patel testified before Congress and said he believes that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide. Senator John Kennedy took this opportunity to grill Patel on transparency relating to Epstein.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself, or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
No, we're going to have to check and see. Blaze News Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson. I mean, that is just, it's such an interesting interaction between Kennedy and Kash Patel. What do you even make of that?
Oh, I think it shows where people are at right now. I mean, Kennedy is always hilarious, and he certainly was funny here before I die. Here, you know, this is the tension that you see right now. People are very gung ho. Give us the information. Where's the transparency? These are all the things we wanted. And there's this, let's call it a habit, let's call it a trauma, really, on the right. Everyone knows that they've been burned 1,000 times by people who promised them they were going to go in and do what right-leaning voters wanted, and then they don't do it, right? So I think people in the back of everyone's head is Kash Patel, we love him. We really supported him in the confirmation, but is he really going to do it or not? And we're in that awkward stage where it could take some time. And so Kennedy is saying, where the hell is this stuff? And, he's saying, well, we're working on it. Okay. That's where we're at. It's a little bit of tension. I'm okay with a little bit of tension because I said the other day, I want people to be accountable, and it's okay if everyone's not just, slapping each other on the back without the results.
Well, speaking of accountability, I think that Tulsi Gabbard with DNI, I think she is doing one of the, if you look at the reviews of Trump's nominees and now picks that are in his cabinet, I think it's pretty clear that she is doing exactly what Trump wanted done in that position. And not only that, but we saw how leaks were such a problem in the first Trump administration, and she is directly taking that on. And here we are just over 100 days into the administration.
Yeah, I think that Tulsi Gabbard has shown, and what her outfit has done and her people have done already, has shown that she is very serious about the campaign promises, very serious about doing what really I think the vast majority of our audience wants to be done, and really I think the vast majority of all Americans want to see done, which is hold the intel agencies accountable and take care of some of the obvious problems. So that's a great thing, and the will is there, and there's every indication that they will have some successes too. But we should say, even in that case, it's been 5 seconds, right? And these things take a while. So she's clearly moving in the right direction.
I just think of Tucker Carlson saying it's absurd with our next story. When you look at DEI and there's like, oh, we already have $2 billion in savings. I'm sorry. How were we spending that much in the first place to go through for DEI? This is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most obvious heartwarming stories, right, of the administration, is they're just cutting this fat and all the DEI stuff, which is really, it's even worse than the money. $2 billion is an insane amount of money, but the damage is going to cost you a lot more that this stuff is done. Getting rid of competent people and putting incompetent people into position in government leads to all kinds, way more expensive than $2 billion. So this is an easy win, but an important one, and a win that we didn't see from previous administrations. So this is good.
Let's go with fights amongst Republicans, neocons, rhinos, MAGA, conservatives. There are so many different groups that they're all in right now. How do you see this shaping out?
Well, I think that the MAGA Maha has won to such a degree that being called a neocon is now pejorative, right? So if someone calls you a neocon, even if the person is kind of like a neocon, they're going to say, no, oh gosh, don't call me that, because it's a bad word at this point. The same goes, of course, with rhino, which is always negative, but everyone knows where the action is, and that's within MAGA Maha. So you have a couple things going on. The actual old school neocons who, were public representations of those old factions, they've all been pushed aside. They're pointless. I mean, Bill Kristol, he's lucky that J.D. Vance responded to him a week or so ago and just pounded him into the sand. No one cares what those people think anymore. The problem is that they still exist in camouflage fashion in Washington, D.C., of course, because you have a lot of elites who would say in the past, the kind of person who would say in the past, I'm a moderate Republican. Those people are they went to Georgetown and studied foreign policy, right? These are the people who are part of the elite class. They know what they're supposed to think. And a lot of what they think is still neocon. But if by neocon you mean an interventionist, globalist American foreign policy, right? That's the majority of the foreign policy establishment, whether they call themselves left or right. So we still have, this group, but on the right anyway, you don't want to be called that anymore. So you have to either fake that you're MAGA Maha, right? Or be outside the tent, which leads to the final important point here. That's why everyone in MAGA Maha world is trying to say, you're a secret Fed, you're a secret establishment person, you're a secret neocon. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're not, right? But that's why we have these internal fights and almost this fight for purity.
I think secret Fed and neocon might be the only words that weren't used in the Surgeon General, Casey Means. There's an entire battle going on. People either love her or they don't on X right now. But the fact that it is an ongoing conversation is interesting, just to see that this is the pick and that people are so fired up about the Surgeon General.
Yeah, so it's such a great point. I mean, it's like what you said about the confirmation battles, right? When we started the show, when are people excited about confirmations? The president, but people are excited because they care about the agenda. They know things need to radically change in America. They know that our health is at risk. They know that our health is terrible compared to other nations. They know something needs to give and change. So all of a sudden the Surgeon General becomes this flashpoint because people care so deeply about MAHA, about making America healthy again. And what you see here is a sign, to my mind, of a healthy movement where there's debate about who is going to best represent that movement. There's scrutiny, there's back and forth. But notice the whole entire debate revolves around who is actually going to make America healthy again, stand against big pharma, et cetera, et cetera. Who's going to be who's most qualified for the job. And if we're having arguments about who's most qualified for the job, we're winning.
There are fights all over D.C. When we come back, there's a shocking report that claims a D.C. outlet sells out for propaganda. Chris Bedford will weigh in next. By the time the show wraps up, another family farm could shut down. And it's not from a lack of hard work, but because most of your meat at the grocery store is imported. It's over 85% of the grass-fed beef that's sold in stores. It's actually shipped in from overseas, and shoppers have no idea. So that's why I go through and get all of my meat from goodranchers.com, because we know it's 100% American. It is born, raised, and harvested right here, and you're actually supporting real family farms. Plus, it tastes so good. So now more than ever, you need to make the switch to Good Ranchers, because Good Ranchers is tariff proof, because everything is made in America. So the grocery store prices, we know that they've been unpredictable. They've been going up and down, but Good Ranchers, their prices stay consistent. So right now, when you subscribe, you can get your choice of free meat for life. That includes your choice of Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or wings in every box. And you'll get $40 off with my code Jill. So the tariffs, well, they won't touch these. But this deal is not going to last. You have to go visit goodranchers.com today. So go visit goodranchers.com to shop, subscribe, and stand with American ranchers. Remember, use my code Jill and get your free meat for life plus extra $40 off. Goodranchers.com. American meat delivered.
We've had no wins on spending in like 2 or 3 decades. You know, Paul Ryan kind of put us in this cul-de-sac forever. I think we're going to come away with this year with probably the largest mandatory savings ever, or adjusted for inflation, since the 1997 balanced budget agreement. That's going to happen.
That was OMB Director Russ Vought with Glenn Beck earlier today on what Trump's big, beautiful bill can do for America. So for more, let's go ahead and bring in Blaze Media DC correspondent Chris Bedford. So we've been talking a lot about this big, beautiful bill, right, for months on this show. So what's the holdup, right? If Donald Trump is so gung-ho about this, then why does Congress continue to drag their feet?
It's a slow-moving negotiation in general, and there's a couple of different committees, and each committee, as part of this process, has to come up with, they're assigned a certain number that they have to hit for cuts that they have to make. They have to work through that process. They have to figure out, okay, can every member on this committee approve this? Is this something that we're all okay with? And then would we be able to get it through the House of Representatives? And then would we be able to get it through the U.S. Senate? And there's a couple places that have been rather successful in this matter. Department of Energy and Commerce, for example, has finished. They, in fact, came in over their cuts. They were tasked with, I think it was like $800 billion or something. They came up with $880 billion in cuts, of course, subject to whatever remaining negotiations. Department of Agriculture is ready, is approaching ready. White House people, negotiators who I spoke with, said that they think that agriculture won't be a really big issue. They're about to get there. And, agriculture doesn't sound like it's that big, just farmlands, but it also includes the supplemental nutrition assistance program, food stamps, things like that. So it's actually a pretty big deal. And then what everyone's all eyes are on is the Ways and Means Committee, which has to come up with the tax cuts, has to figure that out and to balance it, make it work, make it palatable to the liberals in the Republican Party, and make it palatable at the same time to the conservatives in the Republican Party, and then get the White House's blessing. Now, they've been screwed up a couple times. One, every time Speaker Mike Johnson walks into the room, he screws something up. Two, they have a back and forth. They have a back and forth right now that's going on with how they can figure out the SALT tax cuts, which stands for state and local taxes. Now, traditionally, the federal government is essentially covered for extremely expensive, high-tax blue states and their different counties by allowing people to write off their taxes up to a certain level and not have to pay federal taxes and those things that they paid locally. This is a difficult thing. It's kind of a bailout for blue states. It's something that's difficult for the federal government to really, for conservatives to really think about. As one friend who's involved in these negotiations said, why should a farmer in Nebraska be paying for the taxes of Greenwich, Connecticut? It shouldn't be an actual thing. But these these Republicans are really pushing for the SALT write-offs. The ones who are from New York, the ones who are from New Jersey, they lost this. They lost their ability to do this in the 2017 Trump tax cuts. They took that away. And one of the reasons they took that away was because the moderates burned all of their bridges to Trump world. So no one felt like they actually had to take care of these guys. No one actually thought that they were important. And the only way that moderates get power at all in the U.S. Congress is by access to power. They have to be in the good graces of the leadership. They have to be in the good graces of the president if they want to get any access to that power. They didn't have that in 2017. They were in trouble in 2017. And it was actually real. I mean, I know districts, for example, in Connecticut, where talking about the local House and the local Senate of the state, people lost races. Republicans, incumbents lost races to people who never even campaigned. A friend of mine who was in the Republican Party of Connecticut said he got a phone call from the guy who won apologizing over it. He said, I feel kind of guilty. I got drafted. I said, yes, I didn't even knock on a single door or make a phone call, but I won because of the D next to my name. So there was a big Trump backlash that was going on in these states. So Trump said, to heck with these guys. And the conservatives around D.C. said, to heck with these guys. And they essentially raised their taxes. They knocked down the amount that you're able to write off in SALT to $10,000. Now, this is like a roundabout answer to what you're asking about. But now those guys wanted to go back up. Everybody since 2017 has campaigned on being able to bring some tax relief to their donors, to their voters. And they want a $100,000 cap. The thing is, if you're paying $100,000 in taxes to New Jersey, then you probably you're not somebody who's in serious need for a tax cut. You're a wealthy person. Your problems are expensive, but you have the money to pay for them. So it's terrible messaging for a populace. It's terrible messaging for conservatives to figure this out. But the GOP and Donald Trump needs these votes. You can't tell, like you did in 2017, New York and New Jersey to take a hike. You have to bring them on. They can tank this bill. So now that there's delicate negotiations going around that, what is the cap going to be? Folks I've talked to predicted it's going to be about $30,000. Will be the cap, so they can go back and say, listen, we've tripled the amount that we're able to write off. I brought you back a victory. Otherwise, I'm going to lose office and my voters are going to get rid of me. But that's not even the biggest fight. And I got more coming out next week. I just have to finish doing all the research. But how exactly they're going to deal with Medicaid? What's going on with that? Why are working, able-bodied adult males able to get Medicaid in a higher percentage, essentially, than women and disabled and people who don't actually have the ability, pregnant people, elderly people, or the elderly, I guess, have Medicare, people who need these resources? All of these social relief programs were invented because we as a society looked around and said, we don't want people to die for a lack of medical care because of poverty. We want to be able to help those people who cannot help themselves, as Calvin Coolidge phrased it. They've become programs that are just a way to not have to work. And a lot of people are using this generationally, and that's a huge issue. And Republicans are angry about it, but that's the next fight that's going to happen because, once again, those blue state Republicans don't want to do anything to cut Medicaid. And like we talked about earlier this week, there's nothing you can really do to even change anything, work requirements, whatever. The Democrats aren't going to call a cut and campaign against you on. So long-winded answer. Well, my baby screamed and my little boy was rifling through boxes right next to my ear for some reason. But that is the kind of complicated stuff that the Republicans are dealing with in Congress, and it takes time.
Well, unlike the mess in Congress, we cannot hear your baby screaming. It seems
Isn't that
peaceful, just peaceful sound of your own voice. I wish I had this technology when my kids were younger. So let's leave the mess of the budget behind and the budget complications behind, and look at something that I thought was very interesting and alarming today, and that's the media swamp. Let's look at some of our competitors, I guess you could call them out there. Emily Jashinsky with Unheard dropped this bombshell. We got leaked documents here showing that Punchbowl News is offering corporations editorial influence for the right price. Let's talk about that. Is this the new journalism, or maybe it's the old journalism?
It's the new journalism, same as the old journalism. I mean, Punchbowl are essentially unregistered lobbyists who read Punchbowl yesterday, for example, is to get an inside scoop at how much Jake Sherman, this annoying reporter who's always been around for as long as I've been in DC, is pushing for these SALT deductions. It's completely fake. It's a total advocacy. Listen, as one friend who I was talking to earlier today, one colleague who works and is actually involved in some of the negotiations on the taxes, said, if Punchbowl was good at its job, then corporations wouldn't actually need to hire lobbyists. They would be able to read that newsletter, maybe pay a premium. And this is, by the way, these prices are far lower than they used to be for these sorts of newsletters. They'd be able to pay to read Punchbowl, follow it, and know everything that was going on in Capitol Hill. They wouldn't need to pay someone else to do it. Punchbowl doesn't actually really offer that service, though. They pretend to. It's a complete fabrication. I mean, and they really do jealously pretend to. They're extremely catty. When Rebecca, for example, breaks news, they are enraged that it didn't go to them. How dare Rebecca be the person who breaks news? Well, she was doing the work, and she wasn't threatening people the way that you guys were. Instead, what they often do is they push these different issue advocacy things. They push their agenda. They spread Capitol Hill gossip, which is, fun, but not necessarily that helpful. And they create all these false cliffs and these false deadlines. And not only that, but their reporting has been suffering more and more lately. There's always a risk when you're a reporter to get stuck into, especially in DC, to get stuck in the mindset of a bygone era. How the budget is put together in 2025 is very different from how the budgets were put together 10 years ago. And you need to update your knowledge, update your understanding of the new speakership, update your understanding of the power of committees, update your understanding of these processes, and stop just pulling fire alarms, essentially, and spreading gossip, which is what Punchbowl does on the regular. And peddling influence, selling influence, it's kind of the game. And for so much of Washington, it's really disgusting. I mean, I remember examples of Middle Eastern money going around when I was at a nonprofit journalism outfit, trying to sponsor a reporter. And the sponsorship was going to entail, I would like you to, a reporter who can focus on the business environment in the Middle East. It seems like a pretty innocuous thing. There's no editorial input there. And we said, heck no, this is extremely sketchy. We're not going to take foreign governments' money to report on even just a region that's beyond the pale. And then a few months later, they got busted. And it turned out everyone from the esteemed Brookings Institute down to the newspapers were taking these guys' money. And we were the only ones who had said no. It was, it makes you feel a little silly in the end when you realize just how crooked Washington actually is.
Here we are, making a lot of friends heading into the weekend. Chris Bedford, we always appreciate it.
Oh, it's always great to be here, and I can't wait to see you Monday.
All right, we'll see you back then. Don't go anywhere. Steve Baker will unpack a startling revelation about Havana Syndrome. Just ahead. Listen, we know that we're winning. We love all of the winning, but the momentum, it's shifting. We can feel it, but we have a long ways to go. And guess what? We aren't taking money from all these people that Chris Bedford just put. We actually have to rely on you out there, our audience. But this is why Blaze TV exists. We need to keep pushing. We have all the great reporting, all the stories that the corporate media won't touch. So when you subscribe, you're not just watching Blaze TV, you're standing with a movement. And right now, it's just $8 a month when you use my code BNT at checkout. So go to blazetv.com/BNT and save $20 off an annual plan. So let's keep winning together. It's Blaze TV, unfiltered, unafraid, on demand. Investigative journalist Catherine Herridge, her latest probe is going into the Havana Syndrome, and she's getting results. Thanks to her reporting, DNI Tulsi Gabbard is launching a full review into the phenomenon, which affected U.S. officials with a mysterious brain injury that happened all around the world.
Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I feel like the floodgates have finally opened on this story, and that there is a recognition that these attacks are real, and that our American national security professionals deserve to be taken care of, and they need financial help because many of them will never work again in the future.
So here to break this down for us is Blaze News investigative journalist Steve Baker. So Steve, it's been a minute since we've had you on. I'm excited because this is such an interesting topic, right? Havana Syndrome. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it goes back quite a few years, and it is just simply the result of many of our foreign assets. We're talking about State Department officials as well as our intelligence community who are deployed and work overseas, particularly, as the name implies, in Havana, Cuba, where it first came to light. But this was not the only place that these individuals were coming up with these rare and unusual symptoms. They actually call them anomalous health incidences. Let's see if I can say that 3 times real fast. But the point being is that there has been a tremendous amount of investigation on this over the last few years, but the CIA has always denied it. The Department of Defense has always denied that this syndrome exists and that these particular weapons exist. But what we know through our own investigations, as you know, Blaze Media, myself, Joe Hanneman, we have been looking into this for quite some time ourselves, and in a very different way than the actual deployment of this type of weapon that is used long range to affect our foreign assets. But back in May of last year, so literally just 1 year ago, Congress had an open hearing in which 3 expert witnesses told these congressmen, and this was a very, very bipartisan or nonpartisan hearing by both the Republicans and the Democrats, who were genuinely interested in getting to the bottom of this, because their constituents on both sides of the political aisle are being harmed by this, and because the government won't recognize that this syndrome exists and that this weapon exists and that these anomalous health incidences are taking place, these people can't get coverage. They can't get help medically. Insurance is not covering it. We're talking about the government's own insurance is not taking care of this. So it's very important. And these witnesses in that open hearing last year actually said over and over again, if you will interview us in a skiff, in other words, in a private controlled setting, off the record, classified, we can prove to you beyond any shadow of a doubt that these weapons exist. Well, we know through our own investigations in Blaze Media that the entire classification exists. Directed energy weapons are not unknown. Directed energy weapons are used to control crowds. They're used by the military. They're used by local law enforcement. I have actual video from January 6th of what's called an LRAD. This is a sound audio directed energy weapon that is designed specifically to agitate a crowd enough to get them to disperse. It didn't work that day for reasons which we will be talking about and revealing in upcoming stories through the Blaze. But these weapons are, you can see them, the big truck mounted ones, you can see them in demonstration videos by the Department of Defense on YouTube, for instance. They've been around since the 50s. The Russians, who were on the forefront of the development of these weapons, they called them psychotropic and other types of names that they gave to these weapons. But they're both sound and audio, but they're also energy weapons that operate on a microwave level. And their development over the last 70 years have become incredibly complex. They've become miniaturized to the point now where even law enforcement and, I should rephrase this. I don't know that law enforcement has access to what our intelligence community and what our Department of Defense is using overseas right now, but they have miniaturized to the point of being useful in a backpack sized weapon, which is quite frightening because of what they can do. It's not exactly the same weapon that Catherine Herridge is covering. It's the same technology, though.
Now, what's astounding about this is Herridge is talking about other countries using this on us. And, there's a lot of people on the right who frankly, in the beginning of this thought it was a hoax. I mean, State Department, employees are getting sick from some mysterious illness. And so she's saying, no, this is real. These weapons are real, but it's still about other countries possessing them. And it's interesting to me, and I'm proud of the fact that I think we're one of the only, larger outlets that has talked about the reality that we possess these weapons, as you just ran through. Yeah. And what's the reason for that?
Well, first of all, because the CIA doesn't want to admit they exist at all. The CIA has drawn a line in the sand and said they don't exist, and we know that that's just not true. As I said before, you can go on YouTube and see that other larger variations, particularly battlefield versions, and even crowd disbursement for protests. These are used domestically. The frightening part of this, though, Matt, is that we now know beyond any shadow of a doubt, and these expert witnesses in front of Congress 1 year ago. You can go on C-SPAN and watch this hearing. They revealed to us that these weapons are not only in possession of Russians, Chinese, Israel, Britain. We've got absolute proof that the British were using these weapons in Ireland against the IRA back in the early 70s. And the technology, as I said, has advanced tremendously since then. And so the CIA won't do it because they don't want to admit that we are doing the same thing. Look, we have taken what the Soviets had when the Soviet Union fell in 1991. Our intelligence community, as well as private contractors, were buying technologies from Soviet engineers and Soviet scientists at the time, which included these particular weapons and this particular technology. With that, we put it on steroids, advanced it. We have better laboratories, we have better science, better ability to produce these things and to miniaturize the technology. And we know beyond any shadow of a doubt, as I said, in this May hearing last year, they revealed that these weapons are being used domestically by not only foreign intelligence services. They're being used in D.C., they're being used around the Virginia area, Maryland, as well as down near where our base of intelligence and military intelligence operations are taking place down in Florida, that they're being used domestically, not only by foreign intelligence services, but by our own government.
Well, you mentioned that they were being used on January 6th. Let's go ahead and move to that. Let's do a little bit of a lightning round, if you will, because we know that Ashli Babbitt's wrongful death lawsuit, they've had a settlement in principle for $30 million for that. So take us through that. What's the latest?
Well, we don't know that it's going to be 30 million. That's what they were asking for in this particular lawsuit, but the details are forthcoming at some point in the near future. This is a very, very interesting story because it's obviously one of the most tragic events that happened that day. It's also the most controversial because, as we saw in the aftermath of this settlement in principle, that the existing chief of the United States Capitol Police, who has announced that he is retiring soon, in days or weeks, we're not exactly sure, but he came out with a blistering letter that was read. He read had read in all of the morning roll call briefings to the Capitol Police. They sent it out to the Capitol Police email, and we were able to acquire a copy of it as well. And this letter, I mean, he is absolutely incensed that this, riotous insurrectionist person who was attacking the Capitol and was intending to attack and assault and maybe kill Congress members through the other side of that door in the speaker's lobby where she was shot, that this person is now going to get some sort of reward or settlement from that. But his characterization of the event is absolutely wrong. Now, I know you said that this was a lightning round, so I can go way, way deep into this because it's been one of the most, it's been one of the hardest things for me to deal with over the last 4 years as well. I've been on both sides of this issue over and over again, and if it had not been for the work, frankly, of our own Joe Hanneman, I would not be in the position where I am right now on that story.
What about some of the other people who died that day? Is there any developments in any of those cases?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in the Catherine Herridge story on the directed energy weapons, she mentions that she's now getting assistance from Tulsi Gabbard's office. Well, I think we're probably at a point right now where I can say that the Blaze Media is also getting assistance from Tulsi Gabbard's. This is the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, to assist us specifically in researching and getting to the bottom of what we believe quite possibly happened on January 6th as well with these directed energy weapons. We know from one of our previous stories here at the Blaze that General Milley, in the summer of love, the summer of 2020, actually authorized the deployment of I quote, sound and heat weapons to be used on the protesters in D.C. in those riots in our capital during that time. So there's no reason to believe that those were suddenly not used in the largest such protest event in that year or that span of time on January 6, 2021.
All right, let's move on to the fixer, Aaron Black. What do you have on him?
All right. Well, see, this is actually heating up because other people are finally starting to take notice of this. I'm not going to name the particular online influencer because he gets a lot of what he's talking about wrong, but he is getting the message out about Aaron Black, and other people are starting to whisper about this with their outside voices now, and they're beginning to take notice. And we are also getting assistance from Congress and otherwise to begin our look into this particular mysterious person, Aaron Black. And again, go read the Blaze Media special that we did, or that Joe Hanneman and I wrote about Aaron Black, the fixer for Pelosi, who has a long history going back many years, all the way to Occupy Wall Street, of being a professional agitator, professional riot starter, and somebody who actually has bragged and taken credit for creating violence at Trump rallies all the way back in 2016.
It is a fast and often still moving story. I can't believe that it's been this many years, and there are still things to uncover. And we are very grateful that you and also Joe Hanneman are doing that for us here at Blaze Media. So thanks so much, Steve, for all the updates.
Thanks, Jill and Matt. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our clip of the week. You don't want to miss this one right after this. Well, mark your calendars for October 11th. Allie Stuckey is hosting her second annual Share the Arrows event. It's happening in Allen, Texas, and you don't want to miss it. Now, it's going to be a day filled with truth and worship and encouragement of women who love Jesus and who aren't afraid to stand for what matters. We have an amazing lineup, and this weekend, it's Mother's Day. So give the gift to your favorite lady. And remember, she's going to have this gift for a long time. She'll remember this day forever. Tickets to Share the Arrows are available right now. VIP is also an option if you're feeling fancy. So head to sharethearrows.com. Grab your tickets now because last year they sold out very quickly. That's sharethearrows.com. It's Friday night. We want to have some fun. And I swear, if you went back and told 2020 Jill that they'd be talking about trust the science on Fox News, I wouldn't have believed you. So that's going to be our clip of the week, is RFK Jr. torching them on Fox News. Go ahead and take a listen.
And we can make answers. And above all, we are going to get rid of the taboos about challenging orthodoxies, about challenging consensus. And we're telling the public every day, all of us, that is not science. You know, your whole industry was telling the public for years, trust the experts. Trust the experts is not a function of science or democracy. It's a function of totalitarianism and religion.
Hold the vaccines, but inject that into my veins. I love that conversation so much.
I can't emphasize enough that this is important that people tell the truth in these positions after we've been told lies for so long. So to have someone come out is exactly what you said. Who would have thought in 2020 when we were hearing all about how we had to trust the experts? The fact you have the director of HHS, the people who are in charge of all these agencies coming out and saying, oh no, these people have not earned trust. And science is about questioning and finding the truth. It's straight into our veins and also into, the bloodstream of the entire country because it's what we need to hear.
It is. I mean, the fact that it's out there, it's on a big platform, people are hearing this, and just the fact that we have a Kennedy in the Trump administration. I mean, if you would have told 2020 Jill that as well, that would have also blown my mind. But here we are.
No, a lot has changed, and it's really refreshing to see that clip. It was actually a great interview. We have to give some props to another network that I don't usually like to give props to, but this was a great set of people, and you could see together the competency and the common sense nature of what they were talking about.
All right, so there's another clip, right? One
Yes.
might not be enough on Fridays.
Yes.
I don't know. You had one when we were discussing this earlier, and I agree. We have to show it as well.
I mean, look, when you think of all the clips this week, I mean, okay, that was very important. Straight into your veins, yes. 2020, Jill, wouldn't have thought it. You're right. That's the important clip. So it goes up there. But there's another one from Donald Trump that has to stand up there in the all-time great Trump moments.
And when they took over, Buttigieg, who has no clue, he drives to work on his bicycle with his, in all fairness, with his husband on the back, which is a nice, loving relationship. But he didn't have a clue. This guy didn't have a clue. And he's actually a contender for president. Between him and Crockett, you can have that party.
I was just waiting for him to be like, not that there's anything wrong with that. And that would be the only thing that would have actually made that any better than it already was.
He's just so, he's so, the laid back Trump, like the 2.0, 3.0 Trump that we're getting now, whatever it is, the laid back Trump cracks me up because he just kind of throws it in there. He's just relaxed. He's not all hyped up. Yeah, he's on, on the back. He's very laid back. He's low key, as the kids say now. And it makes him even funnier.
I think his best friend Elon has a lot to do with that. I think the fact that they were hanging out together and he's just like, you know what, I'm going to go with the flow. It's going to just be whatever it is. I think he should get a lot of credit for that.
It could be. I mean, Elon is high energy himself in his own way, distinctive way. So however it works, that combination of those two has been incredible for America.
It definitely has been a great pairing. And another good pairing is when you actually go through and have coverage that tells the truth. And that's what we're trying to do here at Blaze Media. But sometimes you need a little help from your friends.
Yeah. So something really interesting is happening now that I want to talk to all of you about, share with you. It's great. And I think it's also essential if we're going to speed run saving the Republic in the next 3 years and setting up hopefully for more, but we don't have a lot of time, right? And there's a lot of untruth. There's a lot of lies that have been spread throughout America for many years now. And there's a lot of injustices that were committed by the United States government under the previous administration. And so in order to get to the truth, here's the thing. I've been telling you night after night, look, you got to give them some grace because government is slow. It's very complicated. There's not like file folders of all the information you need, just at the ready. And so you got to give people time and the benefit of doubt to get the information out there so that we can start learning the truths of some of these mysteries that we're begging the administration for transparency on. And then also some people need to be brought to justice, right? And that takes a long time and you have to build a case. And there's all kinds of different legal or administrative procedures that you have to go through. So how do you speed run saving the Republic? How do you accelerate that process? Let me tell you, there's an easy way that I'm partial to, and Jill's partial to, and I think you are too, and that is you go to the media that is willing to tell the truth and let them help you as you help them tell America what actually happened and what's going on. So this is the reason for the best sorts of leaks that politicians and bureaucrats have used since time immemorial. You get that leak out there because it gets things done. It does go right into the bloodstream of the people. Everyone sees what's going on, and it helps create policy change or some kind of social good. So this is the kind of thing that is now potentially right there for the Trump administration because you do have organizations like Blaze Media that are growing, that have increasingly better coverage of things. And there's a lot of things that, a lot of areas in which we can have a healthy symbiotic relationship, right, with the administration. This is how media works. I'm just being frank with you. Of course, if you have too close of a relationship with any administration, you will just become a mouthpiece and a puppet. But the way that news works is because of the interchange of information between newsmakers and those who are propagating the news on the airways. And that's just the bottom line. So what you see now is really interesting because a lot of the Trump administration is starting to realize this and develop relations with members of the media so they can get information out there, so they can pinpoint what's going on and what's happening. And I think there's going to be a lot of that moving forward. Steve Baker, earlier on in the show, talked about this in regard to Tulsi and DNI and some of the things that they're working on there. And, look, a lot of these people are coming into office in different agencies and departments saying, okay, well, what do we know, right? In order to go down these rabbit trails and figure out what the hell happened at January 6th or the Epstein files, right? And so in order to do that, they go to journalists who've really been paying attention, and some really interesting things could happen that could, I think, accelerate change and get us closer to the truth faster than we would otherwise.
For the sake of conversation, let's just stick with January 6th as the talking point, because Steve Baker was on here talking about that earlier, right? There are so many things that we have learned about January 6th, yet there's still an entire world out there that we're still trying to put the puzzle pieces together for. But January 6th is something that happened, obviously, in the United States that we never want to see happen again. So people have to be held accountable. And that is part of what still needs to be done. It still needs to go through the administration, and getting the stories out there and telling them in a thorough way is one way of going, oh, you know what? You're thinking about doing this. You're thinking somebody in the government, some official somewhere is going, oh, you know what? I can get away with this because this is what's always happened. Nobody ever gets in trouble for this. We need to make an example of something like a January 6th so that we know that it will never happen again, that when these people get that in their head, they say, you know what? Maybe not.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, because they have to know that they will be punished. Otherwise, it will happen again. And we only have a limited amount of time to figure out what happened and hold people accountable. So just coming right off of your point, one of the best things that media can do is bring justice when legal remedies don't apply. What I mean by that is sometimes you can't get Al Capone on murder charges, right? I mean, you can't get the bad guy legally. Or there's not even a law that describes what exactly they did, but we all know it was terrible. How do you get them? How do you punish them? You punish them with media, because you tell their story, as Jill is saying, to the entire world, and then that person, whether the law gets them or not, is destroyed for good reason, and we enact a little bit of justice. We call that doing a justice. We do a little bit of justice here on Earth. And that's one of the fun parts of media, and right-leaning media needs to do a hell of a lot more of that, where we really do punish people who deserve it, and there are a lot of them, as we know. So that is also something that we will be doing more of, and I hope many others will too.
I can't wait, because the rot in the deep state, we know that goes for miles and miles and miles. And we can't wait. Let me tell you, it's one of my favorite things to do, is to look into this and to bring the stories to everybody here in our audience.
Yes. I mean, look, investigative journalism is in many ways the most important part of what Blaze Media is increasingly doing, and we're going to do more and more of it for you.
And we're going to unleash Steve Baker, unleash the beast out there. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here on Monday.